an art degree, they very rightly said there's no point in having that attitude because you will get nowhere. So look at your work, say what's working or isn't working, what do I like, what do I not like, is there any way I can improve it, and so there are all sorts of different things you can do. First thing, which I thought was rather interesting, I put these 4 up because they're all demonstration ones of the same subject, but they've all turned out totally differently. Firstly, do you notice how the horizon's changed? Mm-hmm. And I mean, they're all from the same photograph, so I've done them differently. The first 2, I've got the horizon more or less in the middle. That one is definitely in the middle. That one is slightly lower in the middle. It's always good to have a look at your composition because so much of it is done instinctively, and instinctively we want to tidy everything up and make everything look the same, you know, and we want everything symmetrical because we're sort of symmetrical beings. And so I don't know whether you found this taking a photograph, unless you're very careful, your horizon will always be in the middle. Your subject will always be right in the middle of the picture and everything. I mean, I'm always thinking, you know, yeah, just move it that way or that way, because you want to get a bit more interest in it, and anything that's right in the middle just cuts your picture in half. So that's the first thing to think about. Have a look at some of your paintings. Think, have you got your main subject in the middle of the painting? Have you got your horizon right in the middle? Then what you can do is you can crop it a bit. Obviously with these 2 I thought a bit harder. I think actually, not this one because I did this one here, but this one I definitely said to the class, shall we have a high horizon or a low one? So that was the first thing I was thinking about. Do you want more sky or more sea? So that's what I was thinking there. Here I just obviously decided I wanted more sky and just did it. And you see how the skies are all different as well. And skies, they do say if you paint a sky a day for a year, you will be a brilliant watercolourist. So there's your challenge. And not any old sky. Look at the sky in front of you and paint what you see so you get all the variety. Otherwise, if we make it up again, we'll have clouds like that in a nice little row of sheep. And, you know, because personally, I mean, you might have more imagination than me, but I can't imagine what it looks like. Now, having seen and painted so many skies, I can get a lot of variety and I know what I'm looking for. So often I'm looking for a diagonal, because you remember that 5th mark, your diagonal, which gives you a bit more excitement when you've got a very horizontal painting. So if you can look for diagonals somewhere, I haven't got any in that one. Yeah, I've got one there and I've got some there. So 3 of those I've got my diagonals. That one I haven't got any. You could say it makes for a calmer painting. You could also say it makes for a more boring painting, whichever way you want to look at it. So anyhow, they're just things you can think about. If you've done a painting where something ends up right in the middle, you can just crop it. You can get you can just get some strips of paper and just see which bits look good and decide which bits you want. So you know, you might say, which was the boring one, this one. You might just say, let us just take a little bit of this, and it's quite hard to do vertically, and just a little bit of C or something like that. You know, you can just try. You could try this with one of your paintings, take some strips and just lay them out, see which bit you like best, and if there's a bit that looks better, just crop it. When I was doing the art degree, I used to do these enormous paintings, as you do, and my tutor would come up to it within an inch of the painting like this, and he'd say, that bit's rather beautiful, you know, sort of square inch out of 2 meters, you know, which was always a bit disheartening. But then I did learn from that how to develop my work and how to improve my composition by looking at the painting, which bit works, take a little bit of it, crop it, then maybe do a bigger painting from the little bit that you've taken out. And that way you're developing your sense of composition and what you like and what you think works. So that's a pretty good way of working, and it gives you something to work with. So I'd recommend that. Another thing is doing a subject several times. I've mentioned that to a few people. Once you've, I mean, like I've done this here and here, obviously I've done loads of these, and some are more finished than others, but the more you do a subject, the more you're learning about it, the more you're learning about how you want to do it. So it's a very good way of doing it. And also, if you've done one painting, you might not want to spoil it by doing any more to it. But if you've done the second one, you've always got the first one, which you can leave as it is. The second one, you can push it a bit further, add some more darks, wash out some more lights and so on, wash out a few edges. And so you can always, if the more you do, the less you're worried about spoiling it, and the more you can just sort of have a go and be a bit more adventurous and creative. So that's what I'd recommend, you know, if you really want to sort of develop what you're doing and enjoy it, because it makes it more interesting. And apart from anything else, every time you start a new subject, you're reinventing the wheel, you know, you're sort of having to start all the way from scratch, whereas each time you do another version of one subject, you're sort of building on what you've already done. So it's a good thing to do. I've got this double page spread in the book, which I often think about, you know, one of them, should you crop it? Do you need more dark areas? That's what I say to a lot of people. They say, oh, it's just not working. I say, add your darks. You still haven't got any darks. And you won't get any light in your painting unless you've got the darks. You've got to have that contrast. Do you have any areas of opaque paint, heavy paint, brown particularly? Wash it out and then put a glaze over, a transparent glaze. Also, if you find one area is too busy, like in the background, it was when I was looking at here and we were talking about that, and I was saying, you know, you could just put a glaze over that area. A glaze just means a thin transparent wash, so using one of your transparent colours, a mixture of, you know, those three dark transparent colours, nice and watery, very light touch, lots of water so that it all blends, and it'll just tone down a busy area and make your subject more prominent. And also, if you've washed out, you lose a bit of the sort of liveliness of the paper because it goes a bit sort of misty. So again, if you put a glaze on that, that will bring it back up again. Have you given enough thought to the background or the sky? I'm always saying try and treat it all as a painting. I'll often see people do a landscape and the sky's all white and they're working really hard on the landscape, and I say, well, what's happening in the sky? Oh, I'll think about that later, or I'll put some blue in or something. But that can be sort of 2/3 of your painting, or certainly probably a third. And so, you know, that's all part of the painting, part of the composition. So you need to be thinking about what you're doing with that as well as with everything else. So as you see with all paintings, I try and do the whole painting all at once and try and work it all together because it all affects everything else. And also, as I say, the sky is part of your composition. If you can get some diagonals in, you will get some more interest in it. Have you kept your light areas? If you've painted, yeah, that's the other thing. As you start painting, think about where do you want the light areas or the whites, because it's hard to get them back afterwards. You can do them by painting around them, by masking them out with candles or masking fluid, any of this stuff. I usually paint around things because it's quickest. Too many hard edges, well, wash some out, you know. And I say especially at the edge of the painting, if you have hard edges, have I got any here? Right at the edge. I mean, that is a very strong contrast right at the edge of a painting. So I'd probably take away some of that because it's sort of drawing your eye out of the painting. And we want to keep people's eyes in the middle of the painting. We don't want them going on to the next one. So yeah, try and think about having your focus more near the thirds, you know, the golden means, and nothing too strong at the edges. Have the colours gone a bit dull? I mean, that's usually using opaque colours, it's the washing out thing. Foregrounds and backgrounds, you know, if the foreground, it needs a bit more contrast, a bit more dark and light just to bring it forward, and a bit more in terms of warm colours too. Yeah, and similar background, put more mauves, blues in the background. I've often talked to people about making distant landscapes, and if you put a distant headland in a brown, it's going to come forward at you because that's a warm colour. So if you put a blue or something over it, that will make it recede. And finally, frame your painting. So this is what I've done here, just to show you what a difference, I mean, you didn't see it without it, but it does help to have a little frame around it. Some people put masking tape around before they paint, but I don't tend to do that. obviously if you were having it framed you'd pay a lot of money, but I do happen to have these strips if anybody wants to frame anything, and you just cut it to size, lay it on it. You don't need to stick it to the painting. You stick the 4 strips together, and then you just I can't remember how I attached them to the painting. I certainly attach them to the painting so that like that, you see. So I stick the 4 strips together with Grit Stick, and then just attach them to the painting with the little bits of masking tape, so you're not actually affecting the front of the painting. But it just sort of makes it a little bit more sort of presented. So if anybody wants to do that, I've got some of these, and just cut them to size, lay them on your painting, stick them with the Grit Stick, turn it over, and just fasten them on with the masking tape. And then the finally page, you're painting, not copying. And so it's not a case of, is it a good copy of a photograph? Who cares? But is it an interesting painting? So I always use the photograph or whatever's in front of me as my starting point, but then after a while I'll be looking more at the painting and thinking, what does it need? And if it needs some purple, which isn't in the landscape around me, I'll put some purple in, you know. So it's a case of thinking about it as a painting in the end, you know, and how you're going to make that work as a painting, and what the watercolour does best, and all that sort of thing. So yes, well, it says you might be disappointed with the results. They might be nothing like you'd imagined, which is usually the case, you know. I think in our heads we've painted a million masterpieces, haven't we? And it's just when it goes on the paper that somehow it doesn't quite work. And so yeah, I've said that if you think of each painting as progress onto the next one, you know, and it's all part of the training, the practice, the learning, and the development. And like if you're learning a musical instrument, you don't start off playing a piano concerto, you start off doing the basics and gradually work your way up. And it's the same with painting. And I know that always at school you get one person who is an absolute genius and can paint anything they want without even trying. And, you know, that is very off-putting, and that's why so many people think they can't paint, because they've seen someone do that. They've had no lessons, they can just do it. But then you get maths geniuses as well, and nobody says, well, we all ought to be able to do maths without learning it. So, you know, something about painting, people think either you've got it or you haven't. But I think, you know, it's something, well, I've just worked at it over many, many years, and I think it's something that you can develop if you want to enough.